So yeah, welcome to the Backstage meetup for contributors. Today we have a packed program. This is not that I'm repeating this because I forgot to press record before. We have Taras here who wants to share more about POC of a new YAML interpreter. So there you go.
Awesome. Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I switched over to my different setup. Okay, so what I want to show you is something that we've been working on since Backstage Con, and it's the idea that we would like to, I want to make it possible for users of Backstage to get more value from Backstage. And I think one way that we could make that happen is by allowing more personalization, or essentially our users of Backstage who could be developers, but they could also be SRE people or product managers or designers. They should be able to use Backstage as their kind of like Play-Doh, their playground, to create the things that they need, so that we can create the kind of the circumstances that exist right now in Spotify, where there's a lot of adoption of Backstage, and so as a result, if you want to add anything to Backstage, you can go into Backstage, and I mean, that to add things, you have to add them to Backstage. We want to create that circumstance in every company for every adopter. And so I think part of the way we could make that happen is we can borrow ideas from the Scaffolder, because Scaffolder has been one of the kind of more successful plugins in the Backstage ecosystem. In part because, and we have this, we have a bunch of customers who have hundreds of templates, because creating templates and adding features to Backstage using Scaffolder templates is really easy. And so we see a lot of them being created. And so what we'd love to do is be able to recreate that same experience for every other aspect of Backstage. So you could effectively, in any part of Backstage, you could have a YAML document that you can edit that represents that particular part of Backstage. And so we can use it essentially in the same way that we ingest templates. We'd be able to ingest other aspects of Backstage. So that could be like a layout, but it could also be plugins, it could be configurations for ingestion, all kinds of things that I currently require for you to rebuild a project. We want to be able to make that happen by editing YAML documents without having to redeploy the application. And so what I'm going to show you right now is, so this is so the way we went about this is we created something that we're right now calling platform script. It's a YAML interpreter that can be used in different contexts. So what I'm going to show you is using the YAML interpreter in the front end. And what we're going to do is, so imagine as a developer, you're a user of a Backstage portal. So you come to this page and oh, you know what, it doesn't really make sense for me to have the subcomponents here, because I look at this page all the time, but we don't have any components linked, so it doesn't really make sense for me to show this section. So what they could do is they could go here into the edit layout in the top right corner. And then what that shows is they could see this is the YAML representation of this page. So they can, for example, take this last part here, this has entity subcomponents card. They could just take this out, and they could see it's updated immediately. They can also say, okay, well, actually, this is not now that the links have been removed, I want to make this wider, so I'm just going to make this 6. Okay, so actually, let's make that 12. So okay, so now I'm happy with this layout. So now what I want to do is I want to make this save this, because every time that I go to this page, I would like for this layout to be used, so that I don't have to keep coming back here and keep editing this every time I interact with it. So they take the content of this file or this YAML document, and then they go into the catalog info file. So here's a catalog info file for this component. So what they can do here is they can override it by dropping the code from the editor. So what they're doing is they're overriding here the content layout, the overview content layout for this component, specifically for this component. So we're going to save it. And now when I refresh, it's using the new layout. Questions before I proceed?
I guess one comment I have is I like the power of this, but I don't really like having like grid specified in the YAML. So I wonder if there'd be a way to like abstract between these two layers of, you know, having like column specifications or something that isn't so directly tied to how the page is implemented.
That is a very good question. And the answer is yes. So, what's important about the approach that we took here is that this is, so first of all, I think that what's really important, I think what's powerful about the scaffolder is that it has the right level of abstraction. So you want to be able to have, like, this needs to be declarative in a sense that ideally we would have a way to declare this YAML definition in such a way that is really like very declarative. Like ideally it would be something like, you know, like this. You take this thing, for example, and then you just like write, ideally you would just like, you would say what you want to show on the screen and you wouldn't have to do this kind of, like specify the grid system this way. But what's nice about, and that's something that we can get to, but what's important about being able to arrive there is that platform script and its implementation, it's essentially a programming language based on Lisp. So we can build abstractions using this as a starting point. So you can do the things that you would do in a programming language. Because it is a programming language, you can do the same kind of thing. So we can build abstractions that are going to take care of all the layout elements, so that our users only need to specify the cards that they want to show. Like we can do those kind of things because this is a programming language. So I could show you kind of what that looks like. So let me, Charles, do you want to say anything about that? Because this is like, I mean, this is. You probably want to comment on the declarative nature and the programming side of this.
Yeah, so I think I can just say briefly, those things that you see there, if you can go back to the YAML, you know, dollar grid, dollar entity about card, dollar humanitech card component, those are you know, those aren't things that we explicitly accounted for. Those are just bindings to React components. So whatever abstractions you want to provide, the goal of platform script is to be able to very easily access and compose those abstractions. So it's not about providing a particular set of abstractions, but being able to provide abstractions in general. An abstraction over abstractions, if you will.
So let me show you some of this, and I think we could probably do some of this real time. Like this is like this thing existed for a total like less than 2 weeks, so we're still learning, like getting experience with it. But I think we can try to do some of these things real time. So for example, like one of the powers of the fact that it's a programming language, you can define variables. So like what we can do is we'll build up towards an abstraction that we can use. But so let's say what we can do here is we'll start off with we'll have we're going to define a new variable that is going to be a function, and that function is going to return essentially a fragment that has in it a bunch of components. So let me then reorganize this so this will actually run. So now what we have here, so we've defined this entity links empty state. So what I can do now is I can render this component in the in place of another component, or I can actually, like, let's just render. I'm going to render it here instead of the links. I will render this component. So, oops, sorry, it's editor. Okay, and empty links card. I'm going to render this here. So now we have the card that we just defined at the top here. So this is just defined purely here in YAML script, and we can actually do, like, let's just change this. And now what we could do is we can actually, because this is like JavaScript, oh sorry, not JavaScript, because this is like a programming language, we can actually like build abstractions around these things. And this is something we need to do real time, but
that function can take an argument essentially, right?
Yeah, it can take an argument, yeah. So like one thing I want to show you here also is like with this code, do we have is this button connected to, do we have a, oh, oops.
You could add a click listener if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. One second, copy and paste some code here. So I think for this button, we could do like,
I don't think it's rendering.
We probably, oh, because I haven't actually placed it in this proper place. So let's just put it here. This is going to be empty link state. Yeah, and then we could replace this. So instead of having this link, what we could probably do here is we could say,
you can say on click,
on click,
on click, and then open brace or that, yeah.
And then alert.
No, it's going to be, I would no, alert is a function, so you have to open up
oh yeah,
a curly, open up a curly.
Yeah, like this.
Well, you don't need the curly if you're going to put it on multiple lines, but yeah, and then pass it a message.
Hey, alert. So I can show you how this is done. So before I continue getting into the actual code of how this works, any thoughts? Actually, let me
the security professional part of me just had a heart attack.
So yeah.
So
Charles,
I mean,
comments?
Well, so one thing is because this is this is an interpreter. So the only things that are in this interpreter are things that you explicitly put into the interpreter. So I mean, certainly in a browser, you're going to be operating inside of the security sandbox. So you just have to be, you do have to be very careful about what it is that you're going to be putting in there. What particular security concern are you like worried about? People like hijacking access tokens or?
Yep.
So currently, I mean, you would have to make sure the React components. There was nothing on. I mean, we might have to like scrub events. I'm not sure how you can do it, but like, if, for example, there's no, there is no fetch. There's no way to install. There's no APIs that are bound to this that would allow you to actually like access anything from your security environment. So ultimately, what's in the world what's in the sandbox is what you put in the sandbox. So you just have to be careful about what you put in the sandbox.
The main concern is for there to be no way to get access to the function constructor to be able to evaluate arbitrary code, because then you can do anything, and that can be really hard depending on what exactly you allow. But yeah, I can also see that you can lock it down quite a lot.
Yeah, I don't think you have access to the JavaScript function constructor in here.
A typical one here would be like alert.prototype.constructor.
Right. I don't think so. You don't. Yeah. I don't think that you would. I don't think there's any way to get that. I don't know how, because alert is a function, but it's a platform script function. So it's, the actual JavaScript alert function is in a box. So you don't have access to that from platform script.
So this is for every environment where you evaluate platform script, like you would have you essentially create a context for it, and you can expose different things to it. So I think we like I mean, I think this is useful to see like kind of how this works. So this is this is how we expose the components that could be rendered inside of here.
Right. And so basically when you implement a platform script function, you have to unbox its arguments, and then when you're finished, you have to put the result back into a box. And so platform script only ever sees things that are in a box. And even you can't, for example, for a element that's in a box, you can't even dereference. The dot syntax to access a property on an object is you have to pass through, you have to unbox it first. And so you want to make sure at that point that you don't put anything unsecure back into the box. So I think in terms of it's designed to be, in terms of security, really it follows kind of, the browser model of creating a sandbox of only exposing certain things. So I think, in terms of an extension mechanism, it's, it's.
If I comment this out,
yeah.
What's gonna happen if I comment this out? Gonna
get an error.
Let's see. Oh, nothing happens. Yeah, probably throws an error in the console. Yeah. Right. Let's see.
Anyway, we don't need to deep dive. But
well, maybe we can do that at some point, but maybe not now.
Yeah.
Mark Avery has a question as well, I think. I see.
Yeah, I had a question. Yeah, the creating components on the fly is a little nerve-wracking, but cool. Have you thought about using this for like maybe creating like different like facilitating creating of like persona views, where it's like, oh, if I'm a product person, maybe like I have a different view of like entities or things like that than if I'm like a SRE person, than if I'm a developer or things like that. And you could like stuff this in the database, or like you could do personal customizations of things also.
That's absolutely like the kind of things that we want to be able to enable, right? Because it's like right now, it's difficult to do those kind of things because any kind of personalization requires rebuilding the project for the most part. And so what we want to be able to do, and then like if we have the ability to define what a person sees, because this is just data, like we can store that data as like we can store these in the catalog, we can store them anywhere, and then just have the appropriate logic to choose what should be displayed for a specific user. Like all of that is possible, and I don't think it would take. We wouldn't take that much work to actually enable that. It's just a matter of, like, I could even see something like being able to say for people in this group, their default layout could be something. So because right now what's happening is like the way we have it configured is the way like is for the purpose of the example, I made it like So you can override the layout this way, but what we could do in theory is something like this, where you say like the layout, like layout for this component or overview, content like this. Let's see this, and then like this could be a like layout default service or website overview, let's say. You know, but this is so like this could reference a layout in the catalog, and then you know we could have different, like for different roles we could have different ways of overriding, you know, who sees which layouts they see, and they just need to populate this thing in the like ingest this into the have this in the catalog, and then have the system resolve automatically this layout and then render it for the user.
Nice. That'd be, yeah, we've been talking about doing some different things, because if we want to like extend potentially into product people or, you know, different views for different roles and stuff like that. That's interesting.
I think this is the biggest. I think this is like so using being able to declare the UI of Backstage as data, I think is the biggest thing that we can provide to our users, because we have the possibility of making Backstage kind of like spreadsheets where you don't have to be a programmer to be able to add functionality or customize it to your needs or customize it for your team, but you can get as technical as you want. And then, you know, it's like very common for people to find to see like they start off with just having like a few columns, and then a few months later they have like 35 columns that all do like the things that they need, and they're like doing really sophisticated things with spreadsheets that they didn't think about doing on day one, but as they got more comfortable with it, they were able to do more and more. I think that's one way that we can bring value to our users, is to give them this kind of playground that they could use to customize. And as a team that's hosting the Backstage instance, our job is essentially to expose this in a way that is going to be like safe, but also match the organization. Because like one nice things about this of treating UI as data is that we can replace for each component, we can substitute this component for a different component. So like typography, for example, in our current implementation here is using like typography as like typography would be like something like this. Actually, I should probably just replace this. This is older code. Like older means yesterday as opposed to today. So this is typography. So this is going to create React component typography. So this right now is importing from. It's importing from. Where is this importing from? Typography. Yeah, it's reporting from Material UI core, but we could import this. Like this could be like import a button, grid, and typography from, you know, like internal components, component library. And then now it's going to use these, instead of using Material UI, it's going to use our internal component library. So as the owners of the, like as a operators of Backstage instance, we can control what these things, that people use here, what those things mean. And that it also means that we can then replace these things with our own custom design systems without this having to be like Material UI necessarily. Let's see if this works. Yeah, typography didn't render properly. Any other questions, comments?
Well, one thing I'm thinking about is how you could make new features available. if you have this rolled out in an organization and people have created their own pages and you add a new card that you want people to use. I think there are ways to do that, but it's a for example, you might put an alert or something. You might need to opt out specifically of new features, something like that.
There's what's interesting about this whole idea of like, what's really interesting about this syntax is, and this I think in some ways kind of an advantage over Nunjux, is that this is not what you're working with, like data. You're not like with Nunjux. One tricky thing about Nunjux is that Nunjux is a templating engine that we're applying to templates that are YAML documents, that we're templating YAML documents. Here we're working with data, so you can actually you can transform the data, and I'm actually doing that. Like you can transform the data before it hits the interpreter. And so I'm actually doing that in this create React component, because in the what you'll notice here is that like we're rendering a list of components, but we're not specifying the key. But without the key, this list in React doesn't render. So what I'm doing is the way that I implemented this create React component with everybody's help is to as it's rendering, like I'm figuring out which place it is in the list and I'm adding that key. But that kind of transformation, like when you're working with the data as opposed to working with the actual like code, you can do this kind of transformation. So if you wanted to wrap a component in a alarm, or wrap a component in like a deprecated statement or something, like you can do those things at the data level. So like you could, for example, write a processor that would at any time that it encounters a specific component, it would either replace that component simply by just doing like data transformation, like with YAML, or you could wrap it in another component and say, like, when this thing component renders, I want the user to know that they shouldn't be using this thing anymore.
Yeah,
I think that is a really powerful feature. Go ahead, Charles.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, like, I think probably, and I think it was Tim who was mentioning this earlier, is, you don't want to be really working with low-level React components. We could pass in, like, you could basically specify the layout as a function that takes an argument, which is just a list of all the cards, or key values of the cards. And so if you wanted to add a new card for people to render, you could just add it to that argument, to that function, and then it would be there. You can do all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, so this is really really interesting. I also see a remark that it might be time for a UI UX SIG. Maybe so, but yeah, this is inspiring work. I see a lot of conversation already. So yeah, what's your plan with moving forward with this?
I mean, so we want to develop platform script, because I think it has usefulness outside of Backstage, but I would love to also, like, I want to work with the community to make this, like, so part of the reason why I wanted to do this today is because later today we're going to have a meeting about product management, and I just want our community to know that we have the opportunity, like, we can do ambitious things together, and we can think about what would be the best case scenario, and then work backwards from that. And so, especially because there's so many companies now that are kind of invested in Backstage and its success. So what I'd like to do is just make everyone aware that this is possible, and then work together to figure out which parts of this, how we want to use this. What are the safe paths that we want to introduce to our users? What are the things that we want to avoid? Like, this is really just a kind of contribution to our group, our community, to start thinking about what we can do that is going to be like really exceptional. Because what I'm imagining is a time in the future where Backstage is going to be the foundation of improving developer experience within the company, and everyone within the organization will be able to participate. And then, I don't know how we arrived there, but I think having the right tools for the job is going to be part of that. So I just want to get the conversation started and kind of see where it goes. But we'll also create a PR with this to the Backstage repo, so it will be available for those who want to look at it, like how it works. It will be available for people to play around with. Currently, it's open source and it's in our front side repo, like Playhouse repo.
Do you think it would be useful to do kind of an initial POC or whatever you want to call it, but where you have basically build the entity pages in YAML instead of JSX like you do right now? So it's still kind of in source code in the repo. You don't have the full connection to the catalog, but you just kind of start by being able to define the pages in YAML as a simpler step potentially, and see kind of where, because I feel it's likely to uncover things of how you hook in plugins and how you build new components and so on, without all of the complexity of the catalog and saving in the catalog and so being there just yet.
Can I
sounds good.
echo just quickly what Patrick said? There is a project called Home Assistant, which is very popular among like automating your home, which is fully like YAML driven for painting out UI components as well. Might be something to look into for like some inspiration. But like having it YAML driven would be pretty cool.
That sounds. I will take a look at that. So it sounds like Patrick is suggesting that we could, like, maybe first starting point could be making it possible to render, like, to control the state of an entity page using YAML. So essentially, we have the existing components. Like the default project has, like the create app has an entity page. So being able to essentially render the content of the entity page using YAML as a kind of a first starting point, just see kind of like spike that out and see what it looks like.
Yeah, just to slice the problem apart a little bit, to not need to do the full kind of catalog, because the catalog integration in many ways is straightforward, yeah, but it's also not.
Subtle.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, sounds good.
Just as a way to maybe be able to ship things faster.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that sounds perfect. And we already have a lot of the pieces in place here. It's just a matter of repackaging them in a PR in a Backstage repo for that functionality. Would we want to, like, do we want to have this kind of an editor functionality? So you could adjust the layout and see it re-rendered.
I mean, we would want to at some point.
Okay.
That's definitely right.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it's a very important part of this. Without this, it's going to be very, which we've seen in the scaffolder. Without this, it ends up being quite tedious to edit the YAML.
Right.
Being a YAML engineer is hard anyways, and improving that experience is always a good thing. So yeah, thank you so much, Taras. We conscious of time. Phil, I think that you're here. I think I read a comment of you.
I'm here. Hey.
Are you? Hey, Phil. So great. So you wanted also to show us something you've been working on.
Yes. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. I am Phil, in case you don't know me. Calling P on GitHub. Today I want to demo something I implemented recently called the Custom Field Extension Explorer. So some background on this change. For those who are familiar and use the scaffolder heavily, you might know that it's a bit difficult to put together your templates, especially figuring out what options you have to write those templates, knowing what the front end extensions you could use are, especially the custom ones that your company might have implemented internally. Those are kind of hard to know what's available unless you guys have it documented somewhere. So for example, if you were writing a template and you want to figure out what custom actions are installed, there's already a handy place to find that, to figure out what the options are and how to actually configure it inside your template. I want to build something similar to this, but for the front end part of it. So if you have custom field extensions, I add this to the template editor. So you go to Custom Field Explorer, and here this would actually list all the installed custom field extensions that your Backstage instance might have. So this handy tool here would show you like example how to put this in your template spec, and then also give you a form where you can fill out the options to configure the example. So say if you want to configure the entity tags picker, this is what it might look like. And this is how it would render if you were to use it in your scaffolder. We could also adjust the options. So say we only want to get tags from systems and show the counts next to each tag, hit apply. It'll update the example to show you how you could write this yourself, and also update the example to give you a nice little reproducer of what this would look like with these options set. So hopefully this cool little tool will help make it a little bit easier to write scaffolder templates, just from a discoverability standpoint, to know what options you have available and how to actually configure these options. So it's kind of a little self-documenting as well. So you don't need to look into the code to see how this works. Again, this is available in the template editor alongside some of the other handy little scaffold template composing tools. Eventually, I do kind of want to see everything here kind of compiled together. And ideally, we have some kind of very smart like UI editor, not UI editor, but like editor for just writing scaffolder templates, which includes the front end part of it, inserting the field extensions, as well as possibly also inserting the custom actions. And maybe once you have all that edited, either making that change locally to your file, or another idea is maybe opening a PR with those changes you might have made. And then of course, dry running everything. So you have a nice unified test bed for developing your scaffolder templates. But yeah, this is just a first pass at this. There's a lot of improvements that can be made, like I said, tying this in with the other template editor features. And contributions are more than welcome to continue improving on this. And then if you want to know how to actually add your custom field extensions to this Explorer, there is documentation under writing custom field extensions. There's a previewing custom field extensions section where it goes over how you could update your internal extensions to make it show up in the Explorer itself. The process should be pretty straightforward and similar to how you already define your custom actions. You just need to give it a schema that defines what option you have. You can add descriptions to add more documentation, and then everything should be hooked up pretty easily. It'll show up here and allow you to play around with your internal field extensions. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions?
No questions, just comments. Awesome work. Thank you very much for doing this. This is going to be really helpful.
Yep, no problem. Hopefully it makes it easier.
People already love scaffolder. This will make it even better. It's amazing.
Right. If there's no questions, that's all I had. Feel free to look at the documentation. And of course, welcome more contributions to continue iterating on this.
Awesome. So thank you so much for showing that work. It's amazing. Really, there's even less reasons not to love scaffolder. Great work. Yeah, I'm curious to see where this is going. So what if that would be YAML based? No, anyways. That all aside, I want to thank you for joining this month's contributor session. Hopefully from here, it will be a little bit less messy. I hope not to change the meeting links again. And I hope to see you around at both either the adopter and or the contributor meetings next month. I'll be sure to update the calendar. The agenda item will open shortly after this one, so do check it out. And if you want to make sure that you do not miss out on anything happening, please subscribe to the newsletter. And yeah, I see you around on Discord or GitHub or anything. Also, one heads up is that there's still some holopins being handed out for the Hacktoberfest efforts. And I will do that anywhere in the next week. So if you are waiting for that, please do not message or do message. It doesn't matter. But those will be handed out to you as well soon-ish. Thanks so much for joining, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day or evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.